Hi, welcome to a special edition of Education Matters. In this program, we are going to meet the New Jersey State School Board Member of the Year. We'll talk to her about the role of the board member, how long she's been on the board, and I think she's well-deserving. It's Irene LeFebvre from the Boonton Town Board of Ed. Welcome, Irene. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Even though it's pouring rain, I'm still good.
Well, I know most people who know you were very happy that you won this award. I want to go back to, a lot of people know you for the last like 5 to 10 years or so. I know you a little longer than that. Not that I'm dating ourselves, but how long you been on the board and why did you originally run for the Board of Ed?
Okay, so I've been on the board, I'm finishing 26 years, so which means I have to run next year. How did I originally get on the board is interesting. I did not run for my first seat on the board. The then seated Board of Education had proposed a plan to the community to close the high school and to make us send our students to Pinney and to spread our elementary school kids out among what it was currently the high school, what has always been the high school, not always, but recently been the high school. And I didn't like the plan, and neither did about 150, 200 other people who attended a meeting. And so the Board of Education then said they were going to form an ad hoc committee to review their findings and to see if we could find a fiscally responsible way to keep the high school open and keep the district K to 12. So that committee formed, and I ended up as chair of that committee. And when that committee made its recommendation to the board, which was to maintain our high school and the Boonton spirit that went with that high school, we were at the beginning of the election phase, and there was an empty seat, and there was a write-in campaign, and I ended up with a seat on the board. As a write-in. And the interesting thing about that was at that time, the polling place was in the high school cafeteria, and my son was running for president of the SRA. And so he had campaign signs up, but they had the name LeFebvre on them, and that was considered a polling place violation. So they had to take all his signs down in order for us to have the election there. So it was kind of complicated, and fortunately he was willing to do that. So that's how I ended up on the board. So the first time I ran, I was a write-in.
Wow, I never even knew that. Okay, you talked a little bit about Boonton spirit. What makes Boonton to you a special place?
Well, Boonton is a phenomenal community. We're small, it's a small town, and it's small town proud. Boonton is the kind of town where somebody hears that there's a family in town that has a particular need, and the next thing you know, a whole group of people, business people and local citizens have gotten together and met that need. Boonton's the kind of place where when there's an issue with the schools, parents come out to the meetings, and they don't come out in an adversarial, nasty way that you hear at some board members have to deal with. They come out concerned, and they're willing to listen to the superintendent, they're willing to listen to the board members, they're willing to collaborate on the planning that has to go into it. We had a fire in our building last year, and I think it was last year. And the town businesses offered, churches and businesses offered space to the building. People came out to volunteer to babysit for kids if we went on a halftime schedule. There was a tremendous amount of support. And as a result, we weathered that several weeks of when the high school sections had to be closed. We weathered that with very little interruption to the kids' education. And that doesn't happen in every town. So to me, being in Boonton, everybody in Boonton cares about everybody else in Boonton. And that's not true in every town because that's just a Boonton thing. Generation after generation, families live in the same houses, in the same areas, the same neighborhoods. It makes for a different kind of community and feeling.
Okay, full disclosure to everyone watching this, I am a graduate of Boonton High School. So
yes, and I remember you well.
So you're on the board. What's the most difficult part of being on the school board that maybe the general public doesn't know?
I think the most difficult part of being on our school board, but being on every school board, is balancing academics, academic excellence, needs of students with special needs, not just special education students, but special needs like athletics, like co-curricular activities. And the needs of the taxpayer to be able to afford to live in the town and therefore to be fiscally responsible. And that's true whether you live in a very large town or in a very small town, whether you have a lot of ratables or no ratables. Every single year, the question is, how do we balance those two needs? When do we hit the taxpayers and say, I'm sorry, but we have to ask you for more money out of your pockets? When do we say to teachers or kids, I'm sorry, but we can't ask the taxpayers for any more, and you can't have this particular thing that you were hoping for this year? I think that's across the entire state, large, small, north, south, central. That's your big issue.
And I've known you for a while as a school board member since I came to the association. I know training for school board members and for yourself was like a priority. Why is that a priority in your mind?
I was fortunate to be the first, myself and another girl who was elected at the same time. We were the first people in Boonton to go to the training. We went to the weekend training. I missed the opening football game because we were at training in September. We came back so energized and with so much information and so much more secure in our ability to do the work that was required for being on the board, that I was 100% from that day forward committed to education for board members through School Boards Association. I'm committed to the weekend trainings. I'm committed for new board members, for board leaders, for advanced boardsmanship that we used to do. I'm committed to the kind of training that our field service reps can bring right to us, right in our communities, and that they've continued to do even during this pandemic through Zoom meetings and whatever. And to the boards educating themselves through board retreats. You get so much out of a board retreat. You get to know your fellow board members on a different level. You get to talk in a much more informal way. And you come away knowing each other and each other's strengths and each other's commitments, each other's personal spheres of influence, and it makes for a much better functioning board. So education of board members is just as important as education of the kids, and professional development for our staff. So I'm 100% committed to it. And most of it's free. Most of it's free because our dues cover most of it. Not all of it, but most of it.
So I asked you earlier why you came on the board, why you got involved, but why do you stay? Because you did accomplish the reason you came to the board, but you've been staying on for much longer than that. So why do you stay on the board? What about it?
Every time I think, okay, we've done that, and this is the last time I'll be on the board, we come up with a new issue, or we come up with a new idea, or a new solution, or a new approach. And I can't help feeling each time that it just draws me back. I have 7 kids, all of whom attended the Boonton schools. I have kids who all of whom did well in the Boonton schools, whether they had special needs or they were leaders in their class. I have kids that have gone on to be a doctor and a lawyer and a teacher and a construction person and a heavy equipment operator and an IT person who does stuff which I don't even understand the vocabulary. But my neighbors have kids with the same ambitions and the same goals. I look around the town and I see the kids that are still waiting to graduate from the schools and the ones that have finished. And there's always something new and something interesting. Plus, through School Boards Association, I've become very interested in what happens on our county and our state level, and now on our federal level, and the things that happen there and how they affect our schools, and the decisions that are made on those levels, frequently made by people who don't have a clear understanding of how those decisions are going to affect us locally. The longer I'm on the school board in Boonton, the more involved I've become on the state and county level, and the more often I've gone to visit senators and assemblymen and been able to explain to them why a particular bill might be good or might be bad for the local education people. And that's an opportunity I'd hate to give up. I enjoy being able to see that the people who are making those decisions are better educated about how their decisions are going to affect us.
You talked about your work with the county and the state and the importance of training. And I know you're a group leader where you work with the newly elected board members. What do you think it takes to be an effective board member?
Commitment, time, and an open mind. Okay. It takes a lot more time than you think it's going to before you become a board member. And when people are trying to recruit you to become a board member, it's 2 meetings a month and it's a committee meeting. Then you get on the board and you find out it's a lot more than that in time. There's time between meetings doing reading and doing understanding and asking questions and getting answers. So there's a commitment of time. There's a commitment, though, of having an open mind. What you first think is your first jump to decision may not be the best decision for the community. And the reason the board is made up of multiple board members, 5, 7, 9 board members, in our case, 10, because we're a sending receiving relationship. Lincoln Park has a vote on our board. Until you've heard the reasoning and the input from the other board members, you can't make a really informed decision. So it takes having an open mind, a willingness to listen, to keep your mouth closed, even though you want to interrupt them and tell them that what you know, you have to be quiet and you have to listen and you have to add to the conversation and you have to always be willing to be collegial, not to put people down, not to close people out of the conversation. You have to be willing to truly listen, then form your response, explain your position, and listen again. And after that, then you can make good decisions for the taxpayers as well as the kids in the town.
All right, you told us how to be an effective board member. You told us why you ran. If someone's thinking of running the board, and you gave a pretty good outline of what to expect, I think the time commitment is always a lot more than they think. Why should someone run for the board in your view?
I think people should run for the board when they think they can make a contribution. Now, you might think you can make a contribution because you understand the athletic program. You might think you can make a contribution because you have a special needs kid. You might think you can make a contribution because you have young children that are just starting school and you want to be able to form the preschool and the early childhood education programs. But you also have a contribution to make if you're a taxpayer. Those parents are all taxpayers too, I understand that. But if you're a taxpayer without children, if you're a grandparent, if you are a taxpayer from a family that doesn't have children, and you have a perspective to bring and you have information to contribute to those discussions that take place on the board level. So anyone who has a perspective and has a willingness to take the time to collegially explore that perspective with the other board members is ready to make a major contribution to the educational program in their community. Those people should run for the board.
Well, that brings us to the end of this interview. I'd like to congratulate Irene LeFebvre for being selected board member of the year. Everyone I know at the county and state level is very happy that she won this award. She's very well respected by everyone that I know. And I think her words are, give you a good guideline if you're thinking of running for the board or if you're still on the board and you want to be more effective. So congratulations, Irene, and I look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to congratulate Irene LeFebvre for being selected board member of the year. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Irene and learned a lot from her about the role of the board member and how to be an effective board member. And that brings us to the end of this special edition of Education Matters.